Like, why am I like that in relationships, right? Like, why am I always so bossy? Like, why am I always so controlling? You know, like the kind of conversation I had with my ex-boyfriends, right? I feel like a mother all the time. And that's not what I want to be, you know, because when the first time I visited my inner child, oh my gosh, I was crying like mad.
You talk about inner child or inner adult, we have different personas within our consciousness that are function for different purposes. But once there's a traumatic event that happens, the inner child will undergo shock, and they will go into the state of confusion and grief or pain. And once they cannot take it anymore, what they do is that the unconscious mind will split the inner child and put it back at the unconsciousness. I'm very happy that you are here today, Sheila, because we have been talking about doing a podcast together for a really long time. I'm very excited to hear from you about what's going on recently for you. So do share with us.
Well, the most obvious is that I got pregnant.
Right?
And I don't know, I mean, so much has happened, right? Like since the last time I spoke to you, first the pregnancy, and then I also have been very much on board with the positive psychology practices, and I mean, circuit breaker and like COVID and everything. I feel like throughout this whole time, it was kind of like a huge reset button for many, many people. I mean, I know like this is very much talked about, like this big reset button, but I feel like this reset button really works very differently for different people. And for me, I'm just very grateful that I actually embarked on positive psychology before the pregnancy happened, before COVID happened, because I feel like it had really, I don't know, strengthened me emotionally and spiritually. I feel like, you know, everything just, I was just actually talking to my mom yesterday, and I said, like, the older I am, with all the work that I've done spiritually as well as psychologically, I feel like I am starting to understand, only starting to understand what it means to be living in the present. You know, like it's just it's just so it's so easy and so difficult at the same time, you know, like this whole living in the present theory. So I mean, there was a lot of fear for sure during the circuit breaker and the pregnancy. If I had think too far ahead, you know, because there's so much uncertainty and there's so much unknown that was just happening all of a sudden, and there were so many things that were completely out of our control. And with that, again, I meant the COVID as well as the pregnancy. So like if I had put too much thought into it or worry ahead of time, you know, everything just becomes way too big and way too much to handle. So while that was happening, I was constantly reminding myself to just be in the present and, you know, just take things one step at a time. And it became very manageable because it was just about that one step. It was just about that one day. And it was really okay. And you know, by the end of circuit breaker, I have really learned to kind of accept this new normal and enjoyed it, in fact.
I mean, it sounds like a big whirlwind journey, right, for you and also for everyone. But I also remember and recall the time when we met. And of course, given the context of what this conversation is about, because I met you when you were inquiring at the School of Psychology, and you know, and we were talking about how positive psychology would be able to come forward to help to enable a person to focus on well-being development, building resilience or building strengths, and also in preparation for helping you into motherhood, right?
Yeah, that I definitely didn't see coming at that point in time. But then, yes, it did. I remember when I went to see you, the two biggest questions that you asked was, one, why are you interested in positive psychology? Why do you want to take up this course? And then the second, because I was really contemplating, like, should I take a diploma in positive psych or should I take a diploma in psychotherapy and counseling, right? So then you were asking, you know, like personality wise, like, do you want to rah-rah a crowd or do you like a one-on-one? And it was just so hard. I felt like it was just so hard to answer those questions that time. But I feel like now it is so clear that, because I mean, I've already done both modules and I find beauty in both of them, but definitely the work and the curriculum and the modules in positive psychology is something that I'm so passionate about. There was no regrets at all in the choices that I made.
Great. I'm so sorry to ask that difficult questions to you.
No, but because, like, okay, for example, like Jade, right? It's just very clear that she's the rah-rah crowd kind of person. But for me, I feel like it was, I wasn't sure lah, because while I can rah-rah the crowd, but there's also a part of me that is very quiet and very intimate. Like, I like to have that one-on-one with people. So when you asked me this question, I was like, oh man, like, which one do I choose? Like, which side of me do I want to bring out, right?
Well, that's why in my job, I get to annoy people with meaningful questions, existential questions. Yeah, and you always remember the conversation.
Yeah, until today, I'm still like thinking, good job. Like I'm glad I picked positive side. Really.
Yeah, I am also very happy that our path is synchronized, and you also come to the School of Positive Psychology, and where we really spend a lot of time, energy, and effort to make this accessible to public. And on that note about positive psychology, we talk about happiness and well-being. Is there a certain time in your life whereby you have went through a setback? And I would like to hear from you. What do you encounter and what do you learn from it? Yeah.
I feel like as you are asking me this question, I am looking back at my past, and I feel like that person that I used to be feels so foreign to me. I don't know. I mean, because as we go through the challenges and adversities in life, I feel like we grow and we mold and we become someone stronger and better. In most cases, if we haven't molded to become a stronger and better person, we are only still in the process. And I feel like, okay, so what happened was, I experienced a lot of losses in my childhood. First, my brother passed away when I was 9, and then my parents got separated when I was 12. I mean, at 9 years old, when my brother passed away, I really, really didn't understand what death was. I was really just too young to even understand what it means to lose someone, family, lose a family member or anyone close to you.
How
It
old
was
were you when
only,
your brother passed? Sorry.
I was 9, he was 14, so he's my older brother. He passed away because of leukemia. And I remember at that point, like, the whole family was just grieving. And decades later, our family is still grieving about it. I think some things like that, sometimes you never move past them. You never get over it. Yeah, so when he first passed away, a part of me had some kind of jealousy. I felt like the attention is all on him. Like, how come, when he was alive, it was always on him. And then, like, now that he's passed away, it's still always on him. I just didn't understand the kind of damage that he had done to me. And then as I got into teenage years, as I started falling in love and falling out of love and started getting hurt, I just felt like, why didn't I have that older brother figure to kind of protect me and take care of me? This other male figure in my life, apart from my father, right? Like, this other male figure who would have, been able to kind of understand, because we are closer in age, to kind of talk to me about how, like, man works and blah blah and all those things, right? So then, as I got even older, like in my 20s and 30s now, sometimes I think how nice it would be if, like, he was here to kind of witness my life, like me going through all those breakouts and, like, being hurt and really shattered into pieces, and now I'm like a whole again, and I am like, he'll be really proud of me knowing that I have done this positive psychology, did a lot of self-work on my own, like doing meditation and blah blah, and then finally now I'm complete as a person, and I meet this really amazing guy, and then now I'm a mother of my own. I feel like he would be really proud. And then there's also, like, parts of me that would think, next time when like my parents are no longer around, then I will be all alone. So there's all these like different transitions in how I handled this situation. I I have never been against their divorce because I felt like because they were fighting a lot as it is when I was growing up, and I felt like they weren't happy with each other. Um, Unfortunately, at the age of 12,
That
when
was,
my parents,
that was after your brother passed away, right?
yes, that was after it was a few years after my brother passed away. So I mean, I felt like I was made to parent my parents at a very young age. So I had to make clear decisions. I had to make difficult decisions. I had to be independent. I had to, just live life differently from other people. Lah. So, yeah, and it obviously also changed the view I had of love. And there was also definitely abandonment issues because I felt like, no matter how much a person claims that they love you, eventually they leave you too. So that was a very big problem for me too, because I constantly feel like I need to work harder. I need to be a better person. I need to work harder to keep this person around to love me longer. So I mean, as you can hear from what I've just said, right, you can imagine how it had kind of affected my relationship moving forward. And because I also never really had a family of my own, I mean, it was a family of four, and then by 12 years old, it just became my dad and I. And I always longed for a family, and therefore the relationships that I had were also, I mean, I accepted people who didn't treat me very well because I just wanted to be in a relationship. I just wanted to make it work. I just wanted a family. So I accepted. I wouldn't say abuse, but emotionally, I felt like I should have deserved more, but I stayed in relationship that weren't making me happy anyway. Yeah, so it took me a really long time to, finally realize that I don't have to live my life as my childhood had offered me. I feel like I am empowered to make a change. I am able to write a different story as I grow older. I do have that ability, and I'm very grateful that for all the work that I've done on my own. It took a really long time, but I'm glad that that happened.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, and thanks for courageous to share all this because I do really feel so compelled to hear your experiences, especially what you went through when you were a child. I couldn't imagine the amount of confusion or pain that was present because losing someone that is close to you at a 9-year-old, I think that is a big question of reality, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I guess I used to think that why am I the only one that is going through all of this? But as I grow older, I realize that everyone have their own versions of growing up. No matter for me, it's loss of my brother and my parents' divorce. But for many others, their version of their adversity comes in so many different forms. And it's not for me to say like mine is bigger than yours, because I feel like whatever you experience, the pain and the misery and the memories, they are all real, and they all impact different people in the biggest way. And I mean, I'm grateful because now that I am 36 and wiser, thank God, older and wiser, I do feel that discomfort situations, uncomfortable situations, really force someone to grow. And I'm I'm glad, or I'm glad where I am now. Lah. I mean, I could have turned. I always tell my mom, I say, I could have really become someone else. I could have gone the other way. Could have completely gone the other way, right? But
what's the other way? What's, just out of your, yeah.
I mean, I was in the modeling industry. I was in the entertainment industry. I was all by myself in Hong Kong by the age of 17. I had so much freedom and independence. It could have been any other way. Like I was in the industry where there was a lot of, scandals and a lot of like materialism, a lot of drugs and all those things. But I came out really well, and I'm very proud of myself for that lah. I mean, someone up there, probably my brother, is looking out for me. My parents never had to worry about like me going astray, and somehow I've just been very blessed that way. Even though I have this rebellious streak in me and I have this adventurous streak in me, right? But I was always too timid to ever go off too far from the normal path. So yeah, things worked out really well.
Well, I want to make note and highlight to you, maybe you're already aware, but I just want to say that after the loss of your brother and your parents went through a divorce, you said this word about you had to parent your parent, right? I want to point to that direction for a little bit because it seems to suggest that after a tragic event, some part of you got awoken and you had to step up in your emotional maturity to make decisions, especially to fill in the void of incidents or spaces between relationships, especially when your parents were maybe fighting or going through a conflict at the point of time. You went through a period of difficulties. So your resources were dedicated to making peace and harmony in these situations. And so it forces you to grow up in a way. And that part of you was probably good and mature for you to, as you go over to Hong Kong or go to other places, as you say, there's a lot of other distractions, so-called as going astray. But that part of you actually came out, and make wiser and more mature decisions. So I want to make note to you that came quite as a distinct point to me. Yeah.
It was really under a situation where I had no choice. I mean, when I said that I had to parent my parents, obviously this term was not something that came to me then. I didn't understand that I was parenting my parents. It was until that I was much older when I started reading more about like why am I like that in relationships, right? Like why am I always so bossy? Like why am I always so controlling? Like why am I always like trying to make things perfect and like taking care of like the kind of conversation I had with my ex-boyfriends, right? I feel like a mother all the time. And that's not what I want to be. There's a part of me that is also very traditional. Like when I'm with a man, I also want to feel very protected. I want to feel like I'm very devout and submissive. But then obviously, like life had other plans for me. And then the other part would come out, which is the parent, the mother in me. And then I'll be very nurturing, overly nurturing in any way, in any case. And then I'll be like overly protective and, just naggy and bossy and nagging all the time. Okay, not all the time, but it comes out. And sometimes I don't even realize it. So I feel like that part of me, it took me quite some time to then realize, oh my gosh, I was parenting my friends, my parents. Obviously, it started with my parents. Then I was parenting my friends and my relationships and whoever that was around me all the time. And the thing about that is that then I started asking my psychologist that time. I said, so is that not a good thing, right? Like because to be able to parent someone, it means that I have the so-called maturity and the ability to take care of someone. So then why is it not good? So then I remember she mentioned that if it tires you out, then it's not good lah. I mean, it's only natural, right? Because I really was very tired and I didn't even realize it. I didn't realize that not wanting to parent my parents was an option. Not wanting to parent my boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, or my friends was an option because it was so instinctive inbuilt in me, right? That it was just this part of me. Like remember that time we talked about this parts model.
Yeah.
So that part of me is so quick to step forward to like take charge of the situation, so that part of me will protect the self in me, right? So yeah, so it took me a really long time to finally understand like all these little details on why why I'm built the way I am, like all these little mechanics that make me this person, right? Like inside my brains and blah, blah, and how I function and all that. And that was always something I've always been very, very, very curious about, which is why I even decided to take up positive psychology. Because I always wonder, like, I mean, different people really just take things very, very differently.
Yeah, I mean, just to give context of what you just said, Sheila, you went through that traumatic event when you were younger, and so there's a big part that was jotted in shock, and another part was created, which we call it the inner child. So the inner child was wounded, and then they created a space, and the space was taken over by another part of the mind that is known as the inner adult. So the inner adult, that's a part created by the unconsciousness to come forward to make adult decisions in order to protect the whole self. So this inner adult will tend to parent, like as I said, parent your parents or parent your friends or parent your ex-boyfriends, because this inner adult, that was the role of the inner adult, to protect the wounded child.
Right.
And it also comes from the place of anxiety and insecurity, but they have no time to deal with that. They have to step up and keep making decisions in order to exist or in order to survive. Yeah. And I mean, you will, and now looking back on retrospect, when you say all these things, it seems to suggest that your inner adult has done a lot of work, busy surviving,
Yeah. And so while my inner adult was busy being an adult, my inner child really didn't have the chance to shine. My inner child didn't have the opportunity to flourish and be that child. And so this inner child in me kind of surfaced only when I became an adult, right? Like because the adult kind of want to take a back seat and was just tired already. So that was when I started seeing a psychologist, like, I'm just tired. So then the inner child wants to come out and play. Like the inner child wants to feel, wants to grow, and that took a little bit of time getting used to, because I was not used to letting the inner child out and kind of just embracing the inner child. It was always like, when I'm met with a situation, immediately I just like the adult steps in. And it was very tiring, I mean, I guess everyone who's an adult now would understand the kind of stress it is to constantly have to be worried about something. And that's what adult does, right? They constantly worry and they constantly take care of things and make sure things are in place. But then it is important to balance, because I feel like this yin-yang thing, this balancing thing is so important. Because when the first time I visited my inner child, oh my gosh, I was crying like mad. Just, that child is just abandoned and ignored and just left there alone for such a long time that she was scared. She was scared and she was, alone. Yeah.
Just to slow down a little bit, to give context to those who are listening who may not be familiar with these concepts, because in psychology we talk about having splits in our consciousness, and we have different parts in our consciousness. It's also like our personas, right? We have the role of a father, or the role of a mother, or the role of a friend. So we have different personas that we play in our lives. And so you talk about inner child or inner adult, we have different personas within our consciousness that are function for different purposes. So when we are going through life developments, especially during childhood, when there's a place of safety and growth, the inner child can develop fully in a healthy manner. But once there's a traumatic event that happens, the inner child will undergo shock, and they will go into the state of confusion and grief or pain. And once they cannot take it anymore, what they do is that the unconscious mind will split the inner child and put it back at the unconsciousness. And then the inner adult will be created to come forward to protect the inner child, or the wounded child, as we call it. But when this happens, the inner adult will continue to make decisions. And of course, in some cases, inner adult wants to show the world that they can mature faster. So they may pick out like bad habits like smoking, drinking, or like making adult decisions so that they can show that they can be an adult, and so on. But when this happens, the wounded child or the inner child is being denied, So every time they try to come up to the surface, or when they're in love, the inner adult will have a certain clash. And this may cause some sort of dispute and conflict within oneself. And therefore, what Sheila, you're saying right now is when you went and see psychologists, when you start to do some sort of inner work in an inner child, there was a lot of tears facing these conflicts. I just want to give you context. Yeah, over to you, Sheila.
Thank you for explaining it so well.
That's okay. Yeah.
Oh, but that, like the inner child healing work is really something that I'm extremely passionate about. I think not only because I have kind of experienced it myself, but I also see a lot of people who, as an adult have relationship issues or, different variety and different types of issues. A lot of it stems from childhood. And I feel like it requires a lot of awareness and acceptance of oneself to be able to, kind of go revisit the inner child and do the healing from there, because I think that's really where it begins. So I'm really happy. I mean, if you had asked me if I would want to kind of reshuffle the growing process in any way, I wouldn't want, would I want to let my inner child grow fully as a child, and then as I embark on adulthood, and then, the inner adult grows and all that? I don't know how I will handle it, because I think this journey, despite the difficulties and the adversities and the pain and hurt that I've been through, I think it was the best for me, because I really have turned out pretty well. And all these experiences have propelled me forward into this direction, to be able to have this conversation with you and to realize that all these incidents and events that had happened in my life all happened for a reason. Every time nowadays when things happen, right, like I suddenly had this eureka moment. I said, oh my God, now I know why like this inner child had to, develop so early on. Like, it just, there's a reason for everything. Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't have even say it even better than any, because when you talk about your experience with inner child, I wanted to connect you to the part of having that awareness, having that self-awareness. And I just want to echo you about talking about self-awareness, because many people, they are looking for their significant others in their life, or they are looking for a meaning or sort in their careers and asking these big questions. And many a times that they may look back of some personal experience or earlier experience in their life that they may have undergo during their childhood. Of course, we can argue that there are many different forms of this, but it's very significant to talk about this is because there may be unresolved issues sometimes hidden at the back. And these are, once they're unresolved, they continue to cause disruption in our adult life, right? Yeah, and I like to applaud the fact that you have the awareness to, number one, to explore, and number two, you have the courage to go and investigate, because it must be so confusing, right? Going through what you went through. I just want to wrap this out, in a neat manner, because at the start of the conversation, we talk about you learning positive psychology. And positive psychology is a lot about the science of well-being and resilience. And I just want to hear from you, because when we learn positive psychology, it's not an overnight thing. You cannot learn it within 1 or 2 days program, or you must learn it, you can't learn it from reading a book. So I know that you took a 1-year program at the School of Positive Psychology. I just want to hear from you in the most uncensored or the real opinion was, how has it changed? Not maybe it's too big a question. What are the pivotal parts that you took away that it has helped you to become a better person?
Taking the course?
Yeah.
I guess there was a lot of confirming of my thoughts, because I guess prior to taking positive psychology, I have my own way of adaptation and my own way of dealing with issues. Obviously there are some not so good ways of handling situations, but then as I progressed, and started changing and started to analyze, like, why is it my thoughts and other people's thoughts are so different, and I started to make all these comparisons. A lot of times during the course, I realized I'm given the answers. That, for example, resilience, like why let me think of a good one. There's so many modules that am passionate about. Like for example, positive emotions. Um, One of the biggest, I guess, misconception about emotions, positive emotions especially, is that you are required to be happy all the time. But in the session, I've also learned that positive emotions does not mean that you have to be happy all the time. It just means that different emotions serve different purpose. And as much as anger is a very negative feeling, but it is there to serve a purpose as well. It is there to protect your boundaries, and it is to tell you that your space has been violated. So with that knowledge, I feel like a lot of things make sense. So I feel like through my course, a lot of things started making sense for me. And I no longer have feel so I don't know, I mean, I no longer feel like I need to question my beliefs. I used to question my character or like, a lot of other things as well. Like even for example, positive coping. It was also one of those things one of the modules that I love. Because especially in this time and age, let's just take the closest one, um, COVID-19, right? Like positive coping is so important because I mean we are never going to be in a rosy bed of roses all the time. We are gonna experience ups and downs. We're gonna experience losses. We're gonna experience grief. We're gonna experience breakups and just people that you love leaving us. How do you cope with that? How do you positively cope with that? And it's not to say that by positively coping you have to be embracing the situation. There are some situations in life that is really really hard to uh, embrace, for example like the loss of a loved one or a divorce, a breakup. Like all these things are so hard to embrace, and you can't just say, okay, I choose this incident and I would accept it fully. But it is also allowing yourself to have that space of grief, to allow yourself to just smile and be whatever it requires, right? Whatever it requires you to make you feel better. Of course, not self hurt, not self harm, but any other way to allow yourself to feel better and then slowly recover from there. I feel like it is okay. So there was this post that I wrote recently that it is perfectly okay to not be okay. So a lot of times like I guess nowadays with social media as well, like every time you scroll, you see people being happy, you see people like celebrating life and being joyful and all that. And then when you experience something that is not so happy or not so joyous, you feel like you're disconnected from society. You feel like no one understands you, but that's not true. It is perfectly okay to not be okay. It's just that people don't really talk about it, which is also why I've chosen to use my voice to be vulnerable, because even though I do what I do, but I'm just like anyone else. And the last thing I want to advocate is a pretentious life. Like, for everything that I've experienced in my life, I've never had qualms. Like for your interview, for every interview, in fact, I never want to read the questions first because I want to be as authentic as I can for whatever the interviewer is going to ask. I want to answer them and be there upfront to, just answer all of it. For me, I think that is very, very important. I deserve to um, be real to myself. If I'm First of all, like I have really bad memory, right? So I cannot lie for nuts because I won't remember my lies. And secondly, it is the fact that once you start lying, you have to cover up your lies with more lies and more lies, and it's just endless. To me, it's just so tiring. So I choose to be vulnerable and I choose to be relatable. I choose to be as honest as who I can be.
Okay, so we were talking, Sheila, we were talking a bit about you learning post psychology and that you have taken a lot from there and it has helped you for your personal life and relationships. And you were sharing on the part that you want to use your voice to champion or to advocate for people to use it or to to learn it in some way. So maybe could you share a bit more of what you have been doing?
I've been doing a lot of positive psychology work. During the circuit breaker period, Jade, myself, and the positive movement have also been doing this series of webinars called Wonder and Wellness. We were so encouraged and so happy in that 6 weeks because we saw the community grow with us, and I grew so much in that period of time as well. And it was something I really, really look forward to, like, week after week. So after circuit breaker has ended, we are now coming up with a new format of Wonder and Wellness. So the first session that I'm going to be doing is how your childhood will influence your parenting. So that's something, I wouldn't say that I am not doing this because I'm an expert. I'm doing this because I'm also there to learn. And I would like to, learn together with the community and just share about what I know. A lot of people, like, the first question they will ask is, what is positive psychology, right? Like, what is the difference between the traditional psychology and the positive psychology? So again, positive psychology is not about teaching you how to be happy and joyous all the time. So, it's been really good, like, advocating this work, because this is something I'm really, really passionate about. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And I believe that there's a lot of good work that you, Jade, and Claire are doing. And this is very for the community. I just want to also highlight to those who are listening in, for more information, please visit Wonder and Wellness, and whereby the three of them will come together and share this nuggets of training on positive psychology, how you could improve your life. And I highly encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm so glad that Getting Naked with Happiness has finally happened. Conversations with you always is very enlightening.
Thank you. Likewise, I feel very energized talking to you, Sheila. I have also learned a lot from you, and it's very heartening to know that you're filled with so much love. And I continue to explore this journey together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.